Here are 10 online reviews of the audiobook titled Alexander Hamilton, written by Chernow, narrated by Scott Brick. 1. Historic fiction. Author makes overarching misrepresentations that makes me skeptical of the truth and honesty of this account. He refers to Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party simply as the Republican Party and Republicans, which might lead you to think they were the antecedent of today's Republican Party. But Jefferson's DR Party with its pro-slave stance is the antecedent of today's Democrat Party. He also misrepresents the 3 of 5 compromise and overall issue of slavery in the Constitution. 2. Something about this doesn't feel right. Awesome. If you want to know how great a writer Chernow is. Also, fairly detailed and somewhat enjoyable. The problem for me is the overarching, suggestive tone of the book. It seemed to me too often the case where the writer is either mind-reading or injecting their own personal rationale into the character of Alexander Hamilton. I learned more about what Chernow would like to imagine Alexander Hamilton to be like, rather than what I think he might actually be like, based on nothing other than Chernow's own account, due to Chernow's interpretative style. By no means am I an expert on Alexander Hamilton, and I knew very little of him before, but there's something a little distrustful about the author's portrayal of Alexander Hamilton in the way he presents it. I may need to find another biography now to compare, and 35 hours of listening. For what? 3. Informative, but far from an ideal work. This biography consistently raises questions that call into doubt the personal integrity of its title character, all the while admitting that such questions are virtually unsupported by historical evidence. These include charges of homosexual license, false religiosity, and disingenuous motives where no evidence of such things exist, such as the implication that Hamilton did not apply his own faith to grief at his son's death while encouraging it in others, a patently false assertion. Portions of the book are blatantly ahistorical, such as claims that Hamilton and Washington did not use the name Jesus with religious applications. These claims are largely disproved by the book's own text, and further refuted with simple web searches. In general, the book is informative, but needlessly opinionated and occasionally unjustified in its assertions. 4. No. Scott Brick is all wrong for this. I'm sorry, but this book was completely ruined for me by the terrible choice of Scott Brick as narrator. Don't get me wrong, Brick is a brilliant narrator for fiction, and I loved his reading of Nelson D. Miles' work. But the snarky, always lurkingly sarcastic tone that works so well as John Cory is completely off-key in a serious work of history. There should never be any suggestion that the narrator is, through tone, adding his own commentary on the work, but with Brick, that impression never abates. It ultimately got so bad that I had to stop listening after a few hours. Just couldn't take it anymore, notwithstanding my great interest in the subject matter. Please keep Scott Brick reading fiction where he belongs. 5. Not great. It is rare that I don't finish a book once I start it. This book, however, I did not finish. I enjoyed the history, and especially enjoyed learning about Hamilton's early life. The reason I stopped listening is that I was not trusting all of the information. It seemed to me that there was too much editorializing and too many inferences made by the author. Honestly, I just didn't feel good as I was listening to the last half of the book. 6. A great listen. Overall, it was a great book to put on a bedtime and fall asleep. Besides learning so much more than I could have ever known about our first treasurer, it truly was a surprisingly wonderful glimpse into our nation's history. The cadence of the narrator's voice was an added bonus of it being a great listen at night. I set the sleep timer, and over the last couple weeks had some of the best sleep I have ever had. Highly recommend to anyone interested in history with a combined case of insomnia. 7. Surprisingly fascinating. I decided to read this because I heard this is what Lin-Manuel Miranda read before writing the Hamilton play. It's long as hell and incredibly detailed, but I really liked the narrator and found Hamilton's life story fascinating. Also, surprised how many of the lines from the musical came straight from this book, giving away his shot. Best of wives and best of women. The world was wide enough for Hamilton and me. The list goes on and on. Definitely glad I listened. 8. Long but worthwhile. An excellent review of the early development of the US. I learned a lot of the role of Alexander Hamilton, a man of very humble origins and mostly self-taught. His part in assisting Washington in winning the Revolutionary War and then building the financial and commercial systems of the country was remarkable. It is interesting to think of what our country would be like now if without the creative genius and political leadership of Alexander Hamilton. 9. Outstanding. Incredibly thorough, this comprehensive biography is an absolute must-read for anyone who has a love of American history. Hamilton's impact on the early years of our nation is unmatched by any other founding father, and shaped America as we know it. Chernow's account of his life is superbly researched, brilliantly written, and provides insight into the life of this amazing man, who, to our shame, has been largely forgotten. Scott Brick does an equally brilliant job narrating this piece, and I found the entire experience to be highly enjoyable. I would recommend it to anyone. 10. Loved this long and wonderfully informative book. I was curious about the book, having seen the musical that inspired it. I wept at his death. What an extraordinary man and his family. I learned much about him and of our country before and after its birth. The reader always held my interest. Was sorry to see it end. I admit to feeling daunted by its size, but it was well worth the time. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Tune in for more online audiobooks reviews.